Good morning, boys and girls. I see you had a lesson last week from Mrs. Bryce and Mrs. Schimmel. And I think, with it being Easter, if I am not mistaken, that you did a lesson on the resurrection of Jesus, which we celebrated last Sunday, Easter Sunday. And I think you talked about an apple tree and how in order to plant an apple tree, a seed has to go into the ground and die, and then a tree grows from it and produces fruit. And Jesus was the seed, and he died so that we could have life. So hopefully those of you who listened to last week's lesson remember that. And this week, we are going to talk about ice cream, at least to start. So, this week's lesson, number 39 from Theology, is called Chosen. Now, we're going to start using our imagination and thinking about what we like. It says, imagine going to an ice cream parlor. They used to call them parlors. Imagine going to an ice cream shop, Friendly's, or I don't know where else you might go, the Jigger Shop, if you guys know about the Jigger Shop, on a hot day to buy an ice cream cone. You might go to Rita's. The hardest part is trying to decide which flavor to get. They usually have a lot of choices. So what flavors do you guys like? Probably a lot of people like chocolate. Maybe there's some vanilla fans. There are all kinds of choices. So some people love chocolate and will only choose ice cream with chocolate in it. Others enjoy big, chewy chunks of candy in their ice cream. But what if you went to an ice cream shop and instead of seeing something like maybe this, which probably hopefully looks kind of good, an ice cream cone there, or maybe if you like the chocolate chunks and a different flavor, instead of seeing something like this, what if you saw something that looked like that? And let me tell you, those are not gummy worms. If they were gummy worms, you might be okay with that. But if their ice cream had real worms in the ice cream that you were going to eat. So it says you went to an ice cream shop, but none of the flavors had any appeal. That means that none of them sounded any good at all. Imagine flavors like stinky sneaker, mildew swirl, and earthworm chunk. You would most likely leave the shop without getting anything. I doubt too many of you, unless you're a bird, you might like the earthworm chunk, but otherwise, probably not so much. It says we choose ice cream that tastes good, but when God chooses us to be part of his family, we were yucky, spoiled sinners. Not one of us was good. God didn't choose us because he needed us or because we had some special quality. God chose us while we were still sinners, just because he decided to love us. Do we know necessarily why does he love who he loves? We don't know. Ephesians 1:4 says, he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him. So when it says he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that means we've talked about creation. I'm sure you've all heard the creation story. That means he picked people to believe in him before he even created the world, before they were created. He chose people who would believe in him. So that's pretty exciting. Now it says after Adam and Eve sinned, remember in the Garden of Eden, he created everything and it was perfect. And Adam and Eve chose to sin. They hid from God. We do the same thing when we sin. We try to hide from God and get as far away as we can. If you think about it, you probably even do that with your parents or other people. When you sin against them, you do something that you know you're not supposed to do. Maybe there's a cookie jar in the kitchen and mom made some fresh cookies and she says, no, don't touch these until after you eat your dinner. Oh, mom and dad are busy and they smell really good. And you go down, you lift the lid to the cookie jar and you take one out, you eat it, you put the lid back on, and well, you think, oh, what if they find out I'm really going to get in trouble? And I know that was wrong. So you might hide, particularly if they call your name. So we hide. We try to hide from God and get as far away as we can. Without God's help, no one would turn to him. It's impossible. We're so sinful that we would never want to follow God if he didn't come to us. We are all like runaway trains speeding away from God toward a terrible crash. But because of his love and not because of anything we have done, God chose to save some who ran away. And they have a picture of a runaway train. Now, trains don't actually run like we do with our feet, but if you look here, that's a bridge, and you see the train, and what's going on in this picture? It looks like part of the picture's missing, doesn't it? Well, if you see, you can see the bridge is damaged. It's broken. It's missing. So what's going to happen? This train's speeding along like nothing's wrong. That's what we kind of do in our lives, right? We're speeding along, and that part of the track that's missing is like our sin. Something is wrong, and we don't even know it sometimes. And we just go about our business doing our own thing, like that train speeding down the track. And there's disaster ready to happen because of our sin. And before we come to know God, that's where we are. We're racing toward disaster in our train. But God knows that. And he chooses to save. And he will rescue those people, those trains who are headed for the disaster of their sinful lives. It says, even before creating the world, God chose his children. He knew Adam and Eve would sin, and he planned before creation to send his only son to rescue his people from sin and death. Now, we all know who is God's only son. Jesus, right? Hopefully you all said Jesus. It's good news that God chooses us, because sadly, without the Spirit changing our minds, we would never choose him. The Bible even says that we were dead in our sin. And when you're dead, you can't even get up. You can't even crawl anywhere. You can't speak. You can't do anything. So they use the word dead, not we're sleepy, not where it's hard to move. We're dead in our sin. And the Spirit has to first make us alive before we believe. Apart from God, we are helpless to choose him. We don't even like God until he breathes life into us, opening our eyes to see him. If you think we talked about I'm sure Easter, you probably talked about how at his trial, the people cried out for him to be crucified, for him to be killed on the cross, and he had done nothing wrong, but they cried out for his death. And we don't even like God until he breathes life into us, opening our eyes to see him. Only then, alive in Christ, do we choose to follow God and live for him. So we all start off like this train, zipping down the track toward disaster. We are all initially like this ice cream cone with the worms in it. There's nothing good. There's nothing that makes God want us when he looks at this train speeding down the track toward disaster. But guess what? The Bible tells us that some of us he chooses to save. And it's not because of us. It's not dependent upon good things that we do. Otherwise, we'd be in big trouble, wouldn't we? But God chooses to save us because he loves us. And that's pretty special and pretty important. And I hope you think about that. And if you have any questions about that, you can ask your parents just how much God really does love us. That he would choose to send his son, his one and only son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross to save our trains that are speeding down the track toward disaster, to become a part of his family. So I hope that's encouraging to you. And I believe we should have a separate video of Emily, my daughter, reading your missionary book. So hopefully you will also listen to her read the book and that you will enjoy that. And I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.